أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله تبارك وتعالى وسلم على سيدنا محمد سيدنا وسندنا وحبيبنا وشفيعنا ومولانا صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه وذرياته وأهل بيته ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وبعد. So the topic of the matriarchal mandate, to cut through the alliteration in order to make it clear for anyone it might not be clear for, is intended to make clear that we live in an age that divorces a human being from their fitrah, and that divorcing from the fitrah is manifested in a number of ways that perhaps our forefathers would find strange and vexing. And one of them is the rebellion against gender and against family. Family is a human construct, gender is a human construct, but they're based on what is essentially animal physiology. So form follows function. So there's a reason in the Sharia that when you get married, the man gives the mahr to the woman. There's a reason in the Sharia that, just a number of different things that are there for, for different gender roles are the way that they are. And they're based on certain biological realities. I want to give a warning. If somebody's easily triggered by discussing these types of things, perhaps this may be a good time for a coffee break or whatever. My point is not necessarily to offend people, but what I'm trying to say is that I might discuss a couple of things that describe how the Sharia should be in its normal application. And not everybody has a normal life. Some people have issues. So for example, I'll give again, it's a trigger warning. I really meant it. If somebody's easily offended or easily upset by these things, this may not be the best bayan to sit in. But it's important to say these things because their knowledge is slowly slipping away from us. So if somebody, for example, is a child who is beaten by their parents to the point of grievous harm, injury, death, this doesn't mean that tomorrow we should, somehow remove all children from all parents because this might happen in a certain fraction of the population, or this will happen with everybody. Just like that, if a husband is entrusted with a wife, and he breaks that trust, and he's abusive to his wife, this doesn't mean every husband is going to do that to their wife. If a wife breaks the trust that her husband gives her, it doesn't mean that every wife is going to break the trust her husband gives her. And part of our inability to conceive of the way things should be in a default state, it stems from our obsession with exceptions to the detriment of the rule. So people will have experiences that are not statistically normal. And those people should not be given advice to carry on as if life is normal. They should not be given advice to ignore what's happening around them. They have to deal with what's happening around them. However, that doesn't change what the default assumptions of the Sharia are. So if one parent is abusive to their children, it doesn't mean that all parents, should be somehow restricted from, having the prerogative that parents have with regards to raising their kids. Just because a man, for example, doesn't work or doesn't pay the bills, it doesn't mean that now every woman should be told that, like, you have to become a doctor and you have to pay your own rent or whatever. Otherwise, a man is going to, if you get married to a man, he's going to end up, ruining your life or whatever. Because that's not the case. And the problem with such thinking is that it's very seductive because it plays to emotion. And one of the reasons that people employ such arguments is actually quite a bit more nefarious than first meets the eye. So as a theoretical matter, it's interesting to see that in the contemporary state, the government has subsumed more or less every function that a male traditionally provided to a female. So, for example, if it was 500 years ago in Europe or even in the Muslim world, if a single young woman walked through a town in the dark, alone, it was a security issue. There's hazard to her, no matter where she is, no matter what she was doing. This is one of the reasons the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave the mithal of the justice of the Sharia, that he said that a day will come where a woman can walk from Yemen to Hajj with all of her jewelry and all of her money with her, and she'll be safe. The only thing she's going to have to fear is the wolves or the wild animals on the road. But that's a very unprecedented and abnormal situation. Usually, who would a woman to turn to for her physical defense is her male relatives. If a woman had children, for example, and she needed to be supported, who would she turn to? She would turn to her husband. If her husband wasn't there, then her brothers or her father or her sons or her male relatives would provide that. Every single one of those functions has been subsumed by the state now. Security is provided by the state. If a woman, for example, is pregnant, whether she's married, she's not married, she conceived of the child lawfully, unlawfully, etc., the state is there to provide for her. The state provides her health care. The state provides her medicine. The state provides her a place to live. The state provides her all of those things that she would traditionally receive from a male. And that's not necessarily 100% a bad thing. I'm not here to say that, oh, look, women shouldn't get an education. Women should not get medical support. They shouldn't get security. They should be afraid when they walk through town, et cetera, et cetera. But the observation that I want you to come to is, if all the functions of male family members are completely subsumed, then just like all men are not the same, all women are not the same, this seductive story that you don't need a man in order to survive and be happy, this will seduce a person, and there will be very little material consequences immediately to a person who's seduced by this fiction. Now, why do I say it's a fiction? Hey, you do need a man, just like men need women, for the basic reason that no one will be able to argue with, is that if men and women, if the one gender exists and the other doesn't, then after a certain quantum of time, the entire human race is going to become extinct. This much is an objective matter of fact. It's not something that really, requires serious pondering or serious debate. And a person may debate it, but they're only doing so on the heels of dogmatic antagonism at that point. And so it's more than just that. It's more than just that. Both genders, Subhanalladhi khalaqa al-azwaja mimma tunbitu al-ardu wa min anfusihim wa mimma la ya'lamun. That the duplicity, or duality, I should say, not duplicity, duality is a characteristic of creation. So whether it be in physics, whether it be in chemistry, or whether it be in biology, whether it be in anthropology, always there are pairs of things that are complementary to one another. And the only one who is free from that is Allah Jalla wa Ala, because He's one. And so this attitude is going to necessarily be destructive, just like if a man said, I don't need any woman, or I don't need to have a wife or whatever. Both of them are destructive attitudes. However, the propaganda that's unexamined and that's kind of pushed by the philosophical modernity that is the kind of the dominant aqeedah of the age that we live in, even amongst the Muslims, except for those people who actually study aqeedah, which are very few, likely, finding a grain of salt inside of a sack of flour. The dominant aqeedah of modernism will always play upon a woman to say, you don't need a man, you don't need a man, you don't need a man. And this is actually quite a misogynistic model. It actually never works out in favor of women. It always works out against women. For the simple fact Again, there's a number of ways that we can prove it, but we make a shortcut to the quickest and simplest way of convincing somebody, for the sake of brevity, that if a man and a woman mate and a child is conceived, the burden is always going to be more onerous on the woman than it is on the man, because the work of the man is whatever number of minutes it takes to mate, and the woman is now stuck with what is essentially a parasite for the next 9 months, and then stuck with the burden of having to raise that child for then so many years afterward, where the man can duck out and nobody will ever know. This much is a biological fact. It's not a recommendation or a celebration of whatever, but it's a biological fact. And Allah Ta'ala created the creation this way, and there's a hikmah in it as well. And we can go into that, but in order to have enough time for questions and answers, we'll suffice by saying that. So if you make men and women equal under the law, equal in their rights, equal in their pay, equal in their outlook, but you cannot change the biology. Ottawa can sit and legislate whatever they want. Washington, D.C., London, Paris, they can sit and legislate whatever it is that they want. But they can't change biology. They're trying to change biology. They're saying that you cannot discriminate against a man who identifies as a woman, or vice versa, or one of the other endlessly expanding constellation of genders. But the fact remains that biologically, a male follows one archetype of behavior and of physiology, and a female follows a different archetype. Instead of fighting against it, why not embrace it? Happiness is there in embracing it. So, to get to the point, the highest and most ashraf maqam that a woman can have is that of motherhood. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that a woman who dies in childbirth, she dies as a shaheed in the path of Allah Ta'ala. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, I'm happy with what Allah gave me. All of us should be happy with what Allah gave us. You should be happy with what Allah gave you. I'm happy with what Allah gave me. But if there was ever a time that I wished I was a woman, it's when I read this hadith. You can keep your makeup and jewelry. I never really was all that interested in any of those things. You can keep your lal dupatta. That never really appealed to me. But this thing, when I read this hadith, I say, look at this thing Allah gave our sisters, and we didn't get it. After that, there are so many ahadith extolling the virtues of motherhood. And this is one of the reasons I said, look, there are exceptions to every rule. Don't let the exception, distract you from the rule. So if there's a woman in this majlis that is not able to have children, either because of her own biological condition, or because of her husband, and she doesn't want to leave him and they want to stay together, this doesn't mean like you're worthless as a woman. But it's an exception, it's not the rule. What is the rule? That the highest maqam for which femininity was created was what? In order to be a mother. This doesn't mean don't get an education. It doesn't even necessarily mean don't get a job. There's a good way of doing both of them. There's a bad way of doing both of them. But to allow the seductive, emotional, and imbalanced arguments of modernity to distract you from this fact, to take your eyes off the prize, is a type of foolishness. I don't really understand, how it could keep its own weight, except for it's repeated so many times, just like Chinese water torture. Like they say that there used to be a torture that like they would strap a person down and drip droplets of water on a person's forehead one after the other. Obviously, it doesn't hurt, but after thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of them hit a person's forehead, it drives a person mad, and it actually becomes quite unsufferable. That like Chinese water torture, these types of weird anti-fitri arguments have been said so many times over and over again, that people's uqul, their cognitive faculties have just kind of collapsed and accepted them. But if they were to be put in front of a debate that's even-handed, that doesn't have the force of the government, or doesn't have the force of the police or doesn't have the force of propaganda behind it, it never would have stood the test of time, and they're definitely alien from the human experience, Muslim or otherwise. That this function of motherhood, this is the function for which a woman was created, for her to think that making money is somehow or another, or having a job is somehow or another a replacement for it, it's a falsehood and it's a ticket to unhappiness. Look, why do people give each other jobs? Do you think that somebody gets a job because there's a company out there that wants what's good for you? No, they don't care. They're busy trying to fend for themselves. Every human being is trying to fend for themselves. The only one who gives without expectation of return is Allah. Everybody else, the transactionality that they have is at best for mutual benefit. So when you get a job, the reason they pay you the money that they pay you, the $40,000 a year, the $50,000, $60,000, $100,000, $200,000 a year that they pay you, it's because they're making more money than that they pay you what they pay you. The moment that ceases to be the case, they're going to stop employing you, they're going to stop hiring you. So to say that, you're not fulfilled until you have a job, this is a dubious claim at best. Because there's no biological need to have a job. There's no psychological need to have a job. Even an abusive husband who doesn't work is in fact a proof of that. You don't really need to have a job as a human being. It's not a psychological need that a person has. It definitely is a financial need that people have, but it's not a psychological need. It's not a human need. It's not a biological need that you have. As a woman, you don't need to have a job. However, your entire body is designed and made in order to what? In order to have family, nurture offspring. Your whole entire psychology is designed in order to nurture offspring. That's where you get your happiness from. And don't think that I'm just saying this to the women. I say these things to the men as well. I tell them, I said that your point in life is not to be a loser who goes around trying to buy nice cars and play golf and go skiing and watch sports. If you wanted the ball so bad, why did you kick it in the first place? Kicking a ball and running after it is like something that dogs do, right? It's a stupid pet trick. That's not why you're here. Your function as a man is to what? To have a family, to have what? But I'm not talking to the brothers right now. I'm talking to the sisters. But just in case shaitan comes in your mind right now and says, why is he telling us this? Why is he lecturing us this? This is the same lecture. There's a complementary lecture that the brothers have as well. And these are the teachings of the Sharia, and the dysfunctionality of men and women are complementary. When one is dysfunctional, the other one lags behind, but they'll catch up. And I don't subscribe to this kind of like red pill incel approach of like, yeah, bro, like, you got to be like rough with your wife. You got to be harsh with your wife. Stop simping, this, that, and these type of things that like contemporary chauvinist type people say, because it's not the sunnah of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So I don't care what, Tate said. MashaAllah, he became Muslim. That's between him and Allah Ta'ala. Inshallah, Allah Ta'ala give him hidayah that he actually bothers to learn the deen. But he's not our example. Who is our example? The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not Jordan Peterson and all of these other people, the galaxy of people who themselves, their entire lives are a complete mess. What am I saying is that embracing that path that you were made for. Look, if you're a fish, what are you going to necessarily be better at? Flying or swimming? You're going to be better at swimming. If you try to fly, it's going to be a failure. There is something called a flying fish, but it can only fly for a very short amount of time, after which it has to go back in the water or it'll die. If you're a bird, what will you be better at? Flying or swimming? You'll be better at flying. Imagine if an eagle tried to live its entire life underwater, what would happen? It would be complete waste. Because its majesty, because its beauty, all of it's going to be wasted. It wasn't meant for that. And modernity, what does it do? It encourages you to get a job. Why? Because the people at the top of the economic ladder, they want more workers for a number of reasons. One, so they can make more money. Two, because markets are all supply and demand. So the more workers, the more labor there is in the market, because the supply is high, the price will go down. They want to pay people less for the same amount of work than they would have had there been less workers. This is why during COVID, in America, the minimum wage in many states went up from $7 an hour to 15. It's like unprecedented because it's supply and demand economics. And while that plutocratic class, the 1% of the ultra wealthy people, while they're busy literally funding this propaganda of convincing women that you're not fulfilled until you have the same job that a man has. While they're doing that, guess what? Their wives are at home raising their children. They're having children one after the other. You'll see ultra rich women, they have many children actually. While convincing women, just work for us, you can freeze your eggs and have your kids later. What kind of, oh my good Lord, what kind of a thing is that to say to a person? What kind of bizarre, horror film of an idea is that? If a person has a medical necessity for it, fine, chalo, it's fine. People do things out of necessity. At some point or another, if you're starving to death, eating pork is even jaiz, right? But what in the world? Imagine like your living child, your, adorable 2-year-old daughter, 2-year-old son. Some of them are not adorable, to be honest with you, but whatever. You love them because if you're their mother, you'll love them, right? Your adorable 2-year-old child was an annoyance to your career. Would you stick them in the freezer for a year or two, knowing that you could thaw them later and they'd survive? It's freakish. It's like some Nazi, weird, ajib, abomination. Why would you do that? And so the idea is that they're having kids and they're taking time off of work because they can afford it, because they're making money from people who are actually sacrificing their humanity to make them money so that they can afford those things. And this is a completely materialistic argument. I haven't even mentioned Islam yet. As far as Islam is concerned, your children are your good deeds that will keep paying dividends even after you're in the grave. Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions a hikayah about Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam, that he passed by a grave of a person and that person was being tortured in the grave. Several years later, he passed by the same grave and he saw that person was in ni'mah, that person was in bliss. He asked, Ya Allah, what happened to this person that he was being tortured like so many years ago when I passed by? And now he's in bliss. Allah Ta'ala, through Kashf, showed him, said, ask him yourself. This is his ruh, ask him what happened. He said, I asked the ruh of this person, how did this change? He said that when I died, I was a wicked man. But I had a child that was conceived shortly before I passed away. And that child grew up, and the first day that he said the name Allah, from the barakah of it, Allah forgave me all of my sins. Not Hafiz, not Imam in the masjid, not Mufti Saab, not Shaykh al-Hadith. What? The kid said Allah. Not even namaz. The kid said Allah. And Allah Ta'ala forgave him for all of his sins. I heard this, I cried. Imagine this. This is a father who was a wicked man, and he wasn't even there to raise the kid. So imagine how much reward the mother is getting. I heard this. I brought my children together. I have 4 kids. I brought them together. I told them this story. And I said, you punks better not blow this for me. This is very easy. This is extremely easy. You better not blow this for me. You better not screw this up. This is very easy. I have very low expectations from you. Why? Because this is the way the Nizam Allah Ta'ala made it. Look how easy it made it. He made it easy for you to be a mother. He made it easy for me to be a father. And He made it easy for us to prosper both in our dunya and our akhirah. Only to tell somebody that you're not going to be happy until you have such and such career and then go freeze your eggs. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. By all means, be educated. By all means, be the smartest person. Go to the top university. Get the best job. Become whatever you want to. Become the prime minister if you want to. It doesn't bother me. But to do any of that to the detriment of that thing for which you are created and that thing through which your salvation and your happiness is, it doesn't make any sense. Like if someone said you can be prime minister. However, from the moment you're prime minister, you'll be completely unhappy. 100% you'll feel like garbage every moment of your life. And then when you die, you're going to go to Jahannam. What's the point? The reason people want to be prime minister or powerful or rich or all of those things is because they want to enjoy and benefit from it. So why would you jettison the thing that there's benefit in? And this is, again, like I said, this is the general way things work. Not every woman is going to be the same. I understand not every woman is going to be able to find a husband at all. Not every woman who finds a husband will have a husband that's supportive and that helps raise the kids, or that's a good husband. I understand that. But this doesn't mean A, that all men are pigs, or B, that the rule is wrong. The rule is right. If Allah tested you by giving you a scenario or a situation that's different than what the normal situation is for humanity. Just like if you were born and you cannot walk. It's a different test than most people go through. This doesn't mean that, all the hadith about, walking to the masjid having so much reward are all false because look, I have no legs. Like that doesn't compute. What is it? You have rules and you have exceptions. The exception doesn't teach you about the rule. It exists and we'll deal with it. But understand the rule when you yourself think about things and when you give advice to other people as well. After that, people say, what are you saying? Like women all the time ask me, someone read the Tahawiyah from me. They asked, I got admitted to medical school. My husband is supportive. My parents said they'll financially support me through my tuition, all of it. But I just think about this, will I be a bad wife? Will Allah Ta'ala be upset with me if I do this? I said, if Allah opened a path for you to do it, go ahead and do it. Imagine, do you want our sisters, when they have to deliver a child, to go to a kafir male OBGYN? Do you want them to take their children to a kafir doctor? Do you want them to get examinations from a non-Muslim or from a man? Absolutely not. Al-Azhar actually has a medical school that is from the Middle Ages. It's before modern medicine even. Until this day, they still have the same policy that the gynecology obstetrics, they only admit women into it. Someone has to do that, right? Someone has to be the school teachers. Somebody has to be all of these things that women are actually better suited for than men. And even the things that are not necessarily only specific for women. There are many of them that a woman can do without compromising her deen or her iman if her situation is amenable to it. But the point is what? Situations will differ from one person to the other. If you have 12 children and you're now I want to I don't even know basic arithmetic, I want to go and become an astronaut. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for a man for that matter. Allah Ta'ala is going to give you your Jannah through serving your children. Even as a man, if that's your situation, you have 12 kids, you don't know even arithmetic. Go work and provide for your children. This is going to be your moon landing and your Mars landing and your space mission. This is going to be your Star Trek and Star Wars, all of it. But to dream about things that really, there's no khair in it for you. To dream about things in which there's goodness in it, please do it by all means. Don't let anyone ever say, no, follow your dreams, you don't need no man. All that stuff, all the, sloganistic encouragement. I give you all that encouragement as well. But to say my dream is to completely annihilate my family and be bitter and unhappy. I'm that's, maybe you should have a different dream. That's not really you should think about it for a little bit. Maybe it's not all, I would dream about being a heroin addict. It'll feel really good in the middle. Maybe this is not there's other ways of being happy that may be a little bit more productive for you. The people who are selling that dream, I promise you, they have no care about akhirah for themselves or for anyone else. And they don't have your best interest in mind in the dunya. And it's 100% a case of do as I do, do as I say, not as I do. Don't feel ashamed for having your priorities straight with regards to those things. Don't feel ashamed of embracing your own femininity, not in this kind of fake goddess, you don't need no man type of way. This is the way femininity of Jahiliyyah, right? Allah أَفَرَأَيْتُمُ اللَّاتَ وَالْعُزَّى وَمَنَاةَ الثَّالِثَةَ الْأُخْرَى أَلَكُمُ الذَّكَرُ وَلَهُ الْأُنثَى تِلْكَ إِذًا قِسْمَةٌ ضِيزَى. The mushrikeen of Jahiliyyah used to worship the idols of Lat and Manat and Uzza. At-Taghiyat, Al-Mal'unat. They were three idols, female idols they used to worship, three female idols they used to worship, and they called them goddesses. They say these are the daughters of Allah, and they used to treat them with extreme reverence. So much reverence, the same reverence that you have when you pick up the Mus'haf, when you pick up a copy of the Quran, You know, the same reverence that you have for those things you treat as holy, the Arabs used to treat them as sacred like that. And they would not take kindly to the profaning of those idols. To the point where Thaqif, even after they accepted Islam, they were afraid of destroying the idol of Manat because of their superstitions. Allah Ta'ala gave Sayyidina Khalid bin Walid radiallahu ta'ala anhu the honor of destroying it with his own Mubarak hands. What is the weirdness about it? The weirdness about it is what? That they like honor these idols so much. They say they're goddesses and that they're the daughters of Allah wal-iyadu billah. And on the other hand, if one of them has a daughter themselves, they would bury her alive. يَتَوَارَ مِنَ الْقَوْمِ مِنْ سُوءِ مَا بُشِّرَ بِهِ, that they would hide from their relatives and from their tribe because of how embarrassed they are that they had a girl. They treated real women like garbage, but they used to give like amazing lip service. That's exactly what happens in this society. تِلْكَ إِذَنْ قِسْمَةٌ ضِيزَى. This is indeed an unjust division. But instead of pumping up platitudes and fakery with flowery language, empower yourself in the real world. Empower your sisters in the real world. Give them the advice that will make them actually happy rather than faking and pretending that a man is something other than a man and that a woman is something other than a woman. I know this is a very difficult thing to say and to hear in this age. I sometimes wonder, I was actually thinking about this on the way over, that if like some soundbite gets like put on YouTube or whatever, maybe I'll get banned from coming to Canada anymore. It's okay. Alhamdulillah, mashallah. I'm not really all that afraid of those things. But the idea is what? Is that it's, you have to like call out the emperor's new clothes for what they are at some point. So instead of following that kind of fake platitude, like you're a goddess, you go. The people say this. I see this like bumper plates that have like goddess written on them, and you go girl, and you're this, and you're that, and you're the other thing. Actually, help yourselves and help your sisters empower themselves to like be happy as a human being, be happy as an actual woman, rather than this kind of fake like goddess thing that people have inside of their mind. Help each other out. When a woman is pregnant, help each other out. When a woman gets married, help each other out. Give good advice. Help each other out when choosing, when girls are trying to choose what to study. Just remind one another. You want to, again, career, education, all that, wonderful, 100%. But just don't be ashamed or shy to say that, look, to your sisters and to your daughters, that the thing that will be the most important thing that you do is being a mother. The rest of it's all wonderful. It's all nurun ala nur. But don't ever sacrifice that. Being a mother, being a wife, it has a joy in it. Just like I tell the brothers, being a husband, being a father, it has a joy in it that's not comparable to really anything else. Don't ever sacrifice that. Don't ever give that up. Don't ever think that, oh, look at the hardship and think that I don't want to do this. There's so much. The reason that human beings went through it is because the reward from it, not just in the akhirah, even in the dunya, the rewarding nature of this thing, the reward from it is so much more than the hardship. That the funny thing is, you'll stay up all night with your child. The mothers know, the fathers know. Some of them know. Some of them sleep through the night. But they stay up with your child. You know that when it happens, you'll do it because you want to do it. That love that it teaches you, it's something that's, it makes you like a better person. It makes you like a better human being. Like there's no other way of saying it. It makes you like almost superhuman in how much khair that it transforms you from the inside, and you're transformed for the better. Don't ever let anybody hack that down. If people don't want to listen, you don't have to like nag them about it, but those people who listen, tell them for sure. And don't be ashamed when people mock, oh, look at this, you got married when they're 18 and they're just raising children and this and that. Okay, fine. Go ahead and put your eggs in the freezer. Like, I don't want to say it mockingly. Like, some people have, like, issues like conceiving and things like that that are really not their choice. I'm not trying to mock those people. But, like, why would a person do that for no reason? Go ahead, put your eggs in the freezer and get them fertilized by some random donor and, have them raised by daycare and by public school to the point where they grow up like everybody else says, like, yeah, I hate my mom, I hate my dad. You hear it from Muslim kids, too. Like, go ahead and live that life. See what benefit it is for you. While the people you work for, they work for someone else, and they work for somebody else, and they work for the people who own the company, and those people are having children and spending quality time with their kids while you work like a slave in order to make them happy, while you're a dupe of the state and a dupe of corporate money. It doesn't make any sense. Really, it doesn't make any sense. And if anything you disagree with in the talk, that's fine. Feel free to accept or reject whatever part of it you find reasonable, unreasonable. But if something makes sense from it, then don't torture your own mind. Don't torture yourself by denying yourself its benefit. Allah Ta'ala give all of us tawfiq. Wa sallallahu ta'ala ala rasulihi sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Inshallah, if whatever questions you have, you can put them forward, inshallah. Until when? Okay. All right, inshallah. I'll take these written questions, inshallah. If whoever wants to write more questions, they can send them through the pipeline. And if somebody wants to even like back and forth, like ask something, like that's fine as well with me. I don't mind. I don't know. Abu Bakr Masjid might freak out, but okay. Allah yajazikum khairan. I agree with everything you said, but how do women go about fulfilling their natural roles as wives and mothers when modern Muslim man isn't holding up his natural role of being a sole provider and leader of the home? This is a good question. It's a problem. This is one of the reasons I mentioned from before, which is that instead of hacking one another down, we have to understand that our success only is contingent on the success of others. This is one of the most basic teachings of the deen, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when Allah Ta'ala accepts his shafa'ah, he's not going to go into Jannah. He's going to go back and forth, pleading with Allah Ta'ala to forgive the people of the ummah until they enter themselves. This teaches us something, that if one of us makes it, all of us make it. And if one of us sinks, then it's like all of us sank. And this applies to more than just gender. This is one thing, it's an antidote to people's jealousies, to their hatreds for one another. Be happy with other people being happy and encourage them to being happy. And when asked, what's your reward? What's in it for you when you help another person? What's in it for me is that when my sister is happy, then this is what's in it for me. Why? Because they benefit in this world. Their stock is going up in this world, and your stock is going up in the throne of Allah Ta'ala. What more would you want than that? And so this is something that it requires addressing, and it's a topic. Actually, I have certain gatherings that are men only, in which I talk about what it means to be a man in Islam and what it doesn't. And oftentimes sisters want to attend those gatherings. It's really funny. Actually, it's a crisis, just like our sisters have a lot of nonsense that's being put into their ears. The men are no different. And I'm like, no, let's sit this one out. Us brothers, we have issues we need to work through. Let us figure it out. Trust me, I'm not going to go into that gathering and speak evil about our sisters. You'll be the first ones to benefit from it. And so this is a monumental task. It's very difficult for a person to, in their life, solve the problem other than just let me tell you this. Don't marry, some people it's too late. Don't ever marry a man because of his money. Obviously, if he can't provide the basic necessities, that's one thing. But so many fathers give their daughters to a person just because of how much money they make or what career they have, and the person is an abject jellyfish, a completely scummy human being. And then afterward, those scummy human beings don't even have the decency to give talaq to their wives, who they've made their life into a hell. And then they come, Maulana Sahib, what am I supposed to do? And I've been threatened. I've given the fasakh to women when I was imam of the masjid. I don't do it on my own, but when I was imam of the masjid, if someone came, I would write the fasakh nama, I would dissolve the marriage and put the seal of the masjid on it. And I've been threatened. I've been given threats before about it. I said, bring it on. I don't care. It doesn't bother me. But the issue is this, is that don't give your daughters, don't give your sisters, don't give yourselves, to somebody just because of the money they make. You're not prostitutes that should be sold for money. And I get it. All of us have to make it in this world somehow. But there's something that makes you happy as a woman in a husband, and it's that your husband should be a man. And if he's not a man, if all he knows is mommy, daddy, and I just went to school and I got this job, trust me, you're not going to be happy. 100%. No matter how many $100,000 he brings home every year, you're not going to be happy If he's not even bringing that home at the end of the day, you're not going to be happy. And part of it also is ourselves. We should also know how to encourage our husbands to be men, because the more we try to be the man of the house, the more we disempower him. I recognize that there are certain situations in which they're beyond repair, and you should consult with your local ulama and your local people. That is this something that we should try to fix through counseling, or is this something that we should write it off and move on, and move along with our own separate lives? Every situation is different, but in general, this issue is going to be solved by working together and helping one another and empowering one another. It's not going to be by men complaining about women and women complaining about men. That actually will make it worse. How should we comply with LGBTQ curricula that is being taught and promoted in university programs and occupations? Look, hopefully by the time that we get to that, a person should understand that the world is a funny world, and many people say many things. We don't have to agree with all of them. And sometimes you should speak up when you don't agree, and sometimes you should stay quiet because it's not your problem. And it's a very unideal situation that we're in, that we live in a country where Islam is not the norm. And it's going to require a lot more time and effort in talking to the kids, and time and effort that's not going to be fulfilled by sending them to Islamic schools, sadly. You, as mothers, as aunts, as sisters, you have to talk to talk to the people in your circle and explain to them that this is a thing. These people don't believe in Allah. They don't believe in the last day. When a man marries a man, it's a mockery of marriage. Nothing happens from it except for, except for basically a type of fake ingratiation. And, these people, because they don't know Allah, they don't know His Rasul, this is what they engage in. But we consider it to be a fahisha. You don't have to speak up. If you're going to get expelled from school from saying something about it, just stay quiet and do your studies. If you're going to get expelled from, you're going to get fired from your job for speaking up about it, then don't speak up about it at work. This is one bizarre obsession that Muslims have with regards to this issue, is that, look, when a person goes to Jahannam, they're not going to go to Jahannam because of their sexual deviance. They're going to go to Jahannam because of their kufr. Even the person who goes because of their deviance, that person, if they have iman, they'll get out at one point. So if you're more disturbed by the sodomy of a gay person than you are about their kufr, you haven't understood the message of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Otherwise, I've lived in the Muslim world. Trust me, there are parts of the Muslim world in which sodomy is far more prevalent than it is in Canada. Traditionally, from back in the days of Khilafah, this is a vice that Muslims have fallen into traditionally in very large numbers for different reasons. It's not okay, it's not good. But people understood, this thing doesn't define me. This is a bad thing that I do, but it doesn't define me. I'm still a Muslim. I still acknowledge it's not right. I try to mitigate it. I still have to pray 5 times a day. I still have to go to the masjid, etc., etc. It doesn't define me. And we also have to understand that the sickness that this comes from is kufr. Until you talk about kufr and iman, these other things, as detestable as they are, they're an annoyance compared to a person's kufr and iman. I've said this in many platforms, and I've been hacked down for it, and I stand by what I say because I studied from the Mashaykh and from the ulama and from those people who understood the Sharia inside out and revere it in a way that normal people would find difficult to believe. And I don't need some guy who doesn't, think it's worth his time to learn Arabic or to read the books of Hadith or to read the Quran and understand it. That they obsess about this, and they're going to call me, some sort of munafiq or whatever because of it. It's a detestable thing, but at the end of the day, if you are more bothered about it than kufr, then you've lost the plot. As far as a practical thing is concerned, we do have to talk to our kids and say, look, other people might do this, but we don't do this. And this is why, and lay out the biological reasoning, lay out the shari'i reasoning, lay out the rational reasoning, lay out the social reasoning, all of these things, and give them the tools to understand so that they can navigate the world in the best way possible. Even then, not everybody is going to survive, but this is the system that Allah Ta'ala made, that everybody at the end of the day have to choose what they love. And all we can do is try our best. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Unfortunately, because of the fitna going on specifically in the education system and the amount of filth that our children are exposed to at such an early age, would you recommend them to enroll them in public school, private school, be it Islamic or Catholic, or what do you encourage? Do you encourage that you homeschool them? Jazakumullah khairan. This is a question, the answer varies depending on the parents and the children. If you don't know English and you don't know arithmetic, homeschooling your children is a complete disaster. It's the worst idea ever. If you are proficient in these things, or if you have a circle of parents that are willing to teach these things that you can like do some sort of homeschool co-op with, that's the best solution. If you're not blessed with that, with those circumstances, then depending on the child, it's different. Some children actually, mashallah, are very confident. Some children actually go to public school and they make da'wah and they bring home shahadas from public school. If the child is like that, I see not only no objection in sending them to public school, as long as you keep talking to them and have open relationship, open communication with them about things. I see no harm. In fact, there may be some benefit. If a child is easily swayed by other people and takes influence from other people easily, because Allah Ta'ala created everybody with a different disposition, it may not be a good idea to send them to public school. And so you have to, on a case-by-case basis, you have to evaluate that. There's no one-size-fits-all answer. This is the other thing. Some people are very confident when they give advice about raising children. There's no one-size-fits-all solution for anything. Anyone who talks confidently like it's this and it's not that, they don't know what they're talking about. Everybody's trying their best. Every parent is different. Every child is different. Every home is different. Every locality is different. Every family dynamic is different. All of them are all different. Just find a person that you can make mashwara with that is an intelligent person and a perceptive person who understands the principles of how life functions, and try your best. And even if that doesn't work, then go back to the drawing board, inshallah. But you have to be active. You cannot just think that things magically get better. You have to be a participant in your child's life. You have to talk to them. Don't try to be their best friend. They don't need a friend. They have other friends at like school. Be their parent. So when they say something ridiculous or they want something ridiculous that is bad for them, instead of collapsing in front of the child, show some sort of strength and conviction. They'll learn from your state more than they'll learn from what you do or you don't do. And they'll also have that strength and conviction when it's time to stand for the haqq as well, because they learned it from you, instead of you just giving them everything they want. One thing I can say, and just to go against like all the advice I just gave, anyone who gives their under 18 child a device with internet access that they can go into their own room with is a complete idiot, and should have their children taken away from them. You can put that in writing. There's nothing in the human mind that is there that will psychiatrically allow a human being to defend themselves against what is there on the internet. Not a child, not an adult, not you, not me. So please don't do that. If kids need to do homework assignments on the internet or whatever, put a computer in the common area of the house. But other than that, yes, children are different. Their temperaments are different, and you have to look at it more as an art than as a kind of a plug and chug formula. What is your opinion on masajid becoming a form of community masjid center where programs like quote-unquote sisters game nights and sisters sports night are taking place, or programs where sisters gather together and end up speaking about worldly issues? Should the masajid only be for ibadah? Yes, the masjid part of the building should be for ibadah only, and for teaching and learning, and for the dhikr of Allah, and for dua. But the building is more than just masjid. Like the bathroom is not part of the masjid, right? Because haram to urinate and defecate in the masjid. So the niyyah of waqf is not on that place. If there's a gym or if there's a community hall in the masjid, that's fine. Muslims should have Muslim company. They should have space where they can talk about other things. And if it's done right, it's extremely helpful. If it's done wrong, if it's a space where heedlessness happens and ghiba happens and haram things happen, and where people unwind in a way that's not good, obviously it's problematic, but that doesn't have to do with the idea that people get together and have social circles. It's because of the haram that's happening, not because of people getting together. And so I don't think that's a bad thing. And at some point or another, you can only deal with being deprived for so long. It's not a good policy. It's not a good lifelong policy. A person will break at some point or another. You have to satisfy your nafs at some point, or you'll break at one time or another. Everything, food, drink, your carnal desires, everything, you have to satisfy them at some point or another, otherwise you're going to break. This is the mistake of the Nasara, that they thought that they could live like monks and like nuns. And look how hard their entire civilization broke. They're the most hedonistic and lust chasing people that human society has ever seen. They're doing things that even the tawaghi of the aqdamin, the deviants of the ancient ones themselves will marvel at, like, this is a type of deviancy we didn't know is possible anymore. And they're the ones doing it. Why? Because they don't understand the nature of the nafs, that if you don't fulfill it through something halal and something tayyib, it's going to eventually break and look for that fulfillment through something haram. And patience is something which is a short-term and a medium-term solution. It's not a long-term solution. This is why the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would say, get married. Fasting is only for the person who can't get married. Get married if this is what you want to do. But we stigmatized it so much and like Bollywoodized it so much that it's just become this onerous chore and easier to commit zina, wal-iyadhu billah, or it's easier to fulfill a person's self through some deviance, whether it be in the comfort of their own bedroom with a device, or whether it be through some sort of emotional relationship that a person has at work or at school where the other Muslims aren't looking or whatever. And it's just weird and it's gross and it's just unnatural. And that's what I have to say about that. Question: I understand that men and women came here to carry our generations, but in today's day and age, a man is not fulfilling their rights. There's an increase in divorce rates. If a man doesn't earn, doesn't give respect, isn't present to give tarbiyah to the kids, and on top of that, he expects the woman to earn, give equal shares to the mortgage. You keep saying, well, it won't be a normal situation, but many of us live in a very abnormal situation. Are we supposed to just do sabr? At what point, what's the point of men if a woman can do everything? But that's the thing, right? So I'm not here to like shout you down and say, well, the man is right and you're wrong. Okay, because I know some men, they're completely like checked out. In those cases, don't make sabr. Go to your local Sharia council and get a fasq. If the man just doesn't provide for you, for your children, is not even trying, then 100%, and you don't want to stay with him, 100% go your separate ways. This is why divorce is permissible in our Sharia. Culturally, it's impermissible because, Hindus are expected, like women are expected to burn themselves on the funeral pyre of their husbands. And some people didn't get the memo that we're not Hindus, but it's just, in gross situations, I would never tell a woman to make sabr. Or a man for that matter, if their wife was being extremely abusive to him. But look, one of the reasons that men are asking women to pay half the mortgage is because the house is expensive. At some point or another, if you want to do things a certain way, you have to be willing to make the sacrifices that go with doing that thing. If it's worth working, if it's worth having, it's worth sacrificing for. If it's worth having, it's worth working for. If you want a man that earns a single income and you're not like niqabi supermodel alima hafiza, like PhD from Harvard, that you can command some alpha male like the Crown Prince of Norway or whatever for your rishta, right? Then maybe you should like find a man who's willing to like earn $60,000 a year and live in Winnipeg instead of Toronto. Do you understand what I'm saying? But nobody wants to do that. So if you want him to buy something he cannot afford, then obviously something's going to have to happen. Zuhud is one of the most beautiful things. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said the best wealth anyone's ever been given is qana'ah. It's being satisfied with what you have. Nobody's satisfied with what they have though. Everybody wants to buy a new car. I've never had a new car. Look, almost all the furniture in my house is used. I sleep on the floor. Why? Because I never want to buy things that I cannot afford. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like all your friends will have new furniture, better, nice cars. They'll have, they'll go out to do this. They'll go out to that. The one thing I don't skimp on when I bring in the house, I bring good food, organic milk, organic eggs, all of those things. Because, for a number of reasons that we're running out of time about. But the point is this, like if you don't want to make sabr with a man, if you don't want to follow him into difficulty, you don't respect him enough and you don't admire him enough, why do you marry guys like this? I don't understand. I have no idea why women marry people like this. Especially, somebody asked me like this question, from Toronto in fact, interestingly enough, through the internet. Another Maulana Sahib in Toronto asked me, He said that a woman is asking, what should I do? I want to marry a guy, and he wants to put in the aqd of nikah that the woman will take half of the responsibility for the mortgage or for housing costs. I was like, hey, this is not like, this type of condition doesn't even exist in the Sharia. And in the Sharia, what is it that you write in the nikah nama? What the responsibilities of the man to the woman are, not the other way around. I said, this is like the dumbest thing in the world. I would tell her, 100%, tell her that, look, you need to marry a husband who will provide for you. That woman should tell the man, you need to marry a husband who will provide for you later. And go marry a real man. But we don't do that, do we? Because we have to marry someone from our village back home, and we have to marry someone who has, is this gora, and is this tall, and is this, and is this, that. He has everything, but he's not a man. Go ahead and do it. Really, honestly, you guys are laughing. It's like gay marriage by other means. Go ahead, go for it. Marry another woman. They show up in their to the nikah with a pink sherwani and a pink turban with gold thought inside of it, and they blush on their cheeks. I tell my wife, I say like, thank Allah Ta'ala that someone could have come to our nikah and at least told like who's the groom and who's the bride. You have to make these choices if that's important to you. But you know what? It's going to require some things that are difficult. But I'm telling you, living in a smaller house or living a little bit further away from the neighborhood you like, or not going out to eat like 5 days a week, or not driving like a brand new Toyota Camry, driving a used one or whatever, these things you get over them really quickly. Unless you have some sort of weird materialist fixation, which is another issue, you should go see a therapist for it. You can get over these things really quickly, but when you look at your husband and you have no respect for him, I guarantee your marriage is going to be a complete failure, and the manifestation of that rot is not going to be in your marriage. You might live a life together where you argue with one another until you're completely old and decrepit. Many of our community, even our elders, their marriages are like that. Where even Budde Babe, white hair, they grouch at each other for like decades. And people are like, oh, mashallah, you've been married for 70 years. But it's been like Jahannam of 70 years, right? Some of you are laughing. It may be your own home that you're making you laugh because you can't cry in public, right? You'll never get over that. You'll get over having a Camry that's like 5 years older than the newest model. You'll get over if your house is a little smaller, it's a little older, it's not the right part of town. You can make it nice and you can make it homey. If your sofa is used, you'll get over it. If your man is an abject, spineless jellyfish, you will never get over it. It will either end in talaq or in misery, and probably both. So this is also a reason the Sharia that a woman should have a wali, that a woman should think about who she gives her hand to in marriage afterward. And it may be too late for people, like I'm saying, I'm talking about the way things normally are supposed to be. If you're the exception to this rule and you tried and it still didn't work, the madad of Allah is with you. And if the test is the test that you've been given, like 100%, I'm not blaming you and I'm not putting you down and I'm not going to say like, whatever, something bad about you. Maybe this is your test and this is the reason you'll go to Jannah. But for God's sakes, why would we plan to do these things up front? It makes absolutely zero sense to me. Inshallah, I think the time for the question and answer is over at, they said that at 3:20. Inshallah, we'll make dua, inshallah. And if I said something to like harm someone or offend somebody, I apologize. I didn't come from my home in order to like upset people or speak ill of them. If I said something wrong, feel free not to accept that thing. But if I said something good, inshallah, do think about it and do have some courage to benefit from it as well. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barak ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. اللهم أعنا على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك. اللهم إنا نسألك فعل الخيرات وترك المنكرات وحب المساكين، وأن تغفر لنا وترحمنا، وإذا أردت بعبادك فتنة فاقبضنا إليك غير مفتونين. اللهم إنا نسألك حبك وحب من يحبك وحب العمل يقربنا إلى حبك. اللهم اجعل حبك أحب إلينا من الماء البارد. اللهم ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه، وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم اكفنا بحلالك عن حرامك، وأغننا بفضلك عمن سواك وعما سواك، يا غني ويا رزاق ويا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم إنا عبادك وأبناء عبادك وأبناء إمائك نواصينا بيدك ماض فينا حكمك عدل فينا قضاؤك نسألك بكل اسم هو لك سميت به نفسك أو أنزلته في كتابك أو علمته أحدا من خلقك أو استأثرت به في علم الغيب عندك أن تجعل القرآن الكريم ربيع قلوبنا ونور أبصارنا وجلاء أحزاننا وذهاب همومنا وغمومنا. وصلى الله تبارك وتعالى وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم ربنا اغفر لنا وارحمنا ووفقنا لما تحب وترضى به واختم لنا بالحسنى وارفع بأيدينا راية الإسلام. بركة الفاتحة.